It is late Friday night, and I've been fighting with my video editing software for a couple hours now, and I'm ready to give up on that and just get around to making my RPGaDay 2018 episode 17. Today's topic is to describe the best compliment that you've got while gaming, and I'm going to kind of cheat on this one, and it's going to be mostly a board game related answer, but I'm going to tie it into RPGs at the end, so bear with me. The best compliment that I've got while gaming is in my old town, there was a board game group, and I joined this board game group, and they did big monthly game days where the main organizer of the group had probably 250, 300 board games, and you would pay $5 to get in the door, and you could game from noon until whenever people went home, 1 o'clock in the morning, whatever. I played in several of these events, but I ended up running into a bunch of people who were interested in D&D, RPGs in general, but D&D specifically. They had heard of it, they had seen bits and pieces of it, but they didn't have the tools or the know-how to know where to get started or what they needed to do. So I talked to the organizer and said, hey, this is something I'm interested in doing, but I don't really have the space to do it. Can I use your space? I would not schedule it on weekends where you're doing your big monthly games, but I'd pick weeks in between and we'd just do it when folks were free. And it would be, hey, you don't have to bring anything. I got dice, character sheets, maps, everything. Just show up, learn to play, and play. And he's like, yeah, sure, that's exactly the kind of stuff that I started this group for. So I started doing the 5th edition starter set, and it was more like a adventures league. Whoever shows up this week, the first 5 or 6 people to RSVP will go. I'll bring you up to speed if you weren't there for the previous sessions. I'll start each one out independently, going, this is what's going on, and then even if you've never touched an RPG before, I got you. We'll be fine. And so the person that this story is about ended up showing up to one of those games, and he didn't want to play. He just wanted to kind of observe and see what it was all about. So he hung out, he messed around with some board games over on the side, and then he kind of just watched us play D&D. At the next monthly game day, he showed back up, and we had just finished the game that we were playing, and we were looking to figure out what we were going to play next, and we were thinking about playing Shadow over Camelot. And he spoke up and was like, hey, if you're looking for another player, I'm down to play something. And so we sat down, and I was the only one that had played before. Well, me and my girlfriend at the time, wife now, were the only ones that had played. So I had 4 or 5 brand new to Shadow over Camelot players. And if you've never played the game or never seen the game, it can be kind of intimidating at first because there's about 4 boards, there's hundreds of cards. It can play up to 7 or 8 players for 7 or 8 characters, and it's got 2 rule books because there's 1 whole book of rules and 1 whole book just to describe all the cards and quests. And it can, when you pull it out of the box, it can seem intimidating. But I broke it down, and I was like, look, guys, I got it. We're going to go through it super slow. Don't be afraid to ask questions. We got this. We're going to do the training wheels version. And so we played and won Shadows over Camelot because it's a cooperative versus the game kind of game. So as a team, we all won and beat the game. The compliment comes in that 2 or 3 weeks later, I get an unprompted message from the guy on Meetup saying, hey, I don't know if you remember me, but I watched you teach D&D to folks, and then I sat in when you taught us all how to play Shadows over Camelot, and I was really impressed in the way that you are patient and you work with new players. No matter what you're teaching, you help them understand, and you try to break things down in ways that they can get smaller bite-sized pieces instead of just being, flooded with rules and overloaded. And I think you did a really good job explaining everything. And the reason I'm messaging you is myself and my son run a small game studio, and we've been hired by Frank Zanka, a Hollywood producer, to make a board game themed after Star Trek Renegade show that he was working on. However, once we started working on this thing, it's kind of super complicated, and what we want is somebody who's real good at explaining things to sit down and not necessarily just explain it to us, but we want that non-studio like play tester mindset. We want you to grab this box, crack it open like you had just bought it, got it from the store, and you need to explain it to everyone around your kitchen table. And we think that you would be a great person to do that because of the way that you have been teaching stuff at the board game events. And I was like, sure, that sounds super awesome. Sounds like it'll be a blast. Me and the wife would love to come and help out and do whatever we need to do. So me and the wife went, and we ended up playtesting this game for, I think, 4 different times total, 3 or 4 hours apiece. And, I kept notes as I was explaining everything. I took a copy of the rulebook home and read through it, and, not just told them things that I found difficult to try and explain to someone, but helped them with, I think, if you moved this page of the rulebook or this paragraph, little things that would make it easier for the person reading the rulebook to not have to flip back and forth and to know where they need to go look for something, so that whoever gets saddled with, this game's complicated, you are the rulebook reader, that person's job can be, much less of a learning curve, making it easier for everyone. And I'm going to tie this back into RPGs at the end with, that's the best compliment that I've ever had, is the folks that take time to express that, hey, you really helped, you were a really great teacher, and I appreciate the effort that you spent teaching me, teaching others, explaining things, having stuff on hand, and just being a person who helps people get over that first hurdle into RPGs. Because sometimes when you don't know where to start or you don't know what to do, you've heard of D&D, you've heard of RPGs, but it's just a big block of rules, and there's nothing that you can do without dropping money on dice and rule books, and it seems like a lot just to get started and not quite know whether you're going to like it. So the fact that you teach, you provide the materials, and you let people see what it's about and see how easy it is, so that they are already past the hard part, the getting started, and from there all they have to do is continue to build on what they know and start playing. So the best compliment that I've had while gaming is, hey, you really help people build a foundation. You help explain things in a way that anyone can understand, and you help people get into the hobby and have fun doing it.